The radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this October 17th, 2024. A day that will be remembered for the death of one of the bad guys in the world, one of the evil doers of the world. So, historic day, you know, in context, of course. But yes, Sinwar, the leader, political and military leader of Hamas, has been killed. We'll get into more detail about who he was, a little bit of his background history, and what he was responsible for, and how he died, which is interesting. We'll get into all of that, and then what now, right? What now? What happens now? Is this war over? Does Hamas surrender? Where do we go from here? And then we'll also talk. About. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the U.S. attack on the Houthis overnight, which was interesting as well. And then we'll talk about DEI, particularly at the University of Michigan, which is interesting. We'll talk about FBI crime statistics, which were revised. And we'll end on a positive with something positive on Elon Musk. Yeah, you know, we'll go from there. And of course, we'll take your questions, and you get to shape the show, because I spend a lot of the show answering your questions, which is unique, I think, in the world of podcasts. You know, I'll answer pretty much anything on any topic, hopefully well. So, yeah, feel free to ask questions on any topic: Middle East, philosophy, Elon Musk, elections, whatever you want. The floor is yours. We have a goal every show. And by the way, Ryan has called today in celebration of Sinwar's death, $5 Sticker Thursday Day. So if you would like to participate, if you would like to support the show and celebrate Sinwar dying, that's something worth celebrating, then jump in with a sticker. No question needed, just a $5 sticker, $5 question, $5 sticker, and let's rate them up. You know, 100 $5 stickers is a lot of money. So keep it coming. All right, so let's talk about Sinwar. So Sinwar has been the political leader of Hamas for the last few months, since the Hania, the previous political leader of Hamas, was assassinated by Israel while sleeping in Tehran, in the middle of Iran, in the middle of the capital of Iran, in a spectacular intelligence operation. Go down as one of the great intelligence operations ever, together with the beepers and everything else. But that's pretty amazing. Tehran is far away, and their ability to infiltrate and kill him was just amazing. Anyway, at that point, Sinwar basically became the unquestionable, total, complete leader of Hamas. Before that, he was the military leader, the recognized military leader, and had been since, I think, the 2017 or something around then, as the military leader in Gaza of Hamas. Let's do a little bit of the history of Sinwar, and then we'll get into what actually happened today. Sinwar was born in 1962, so he's a year younger than me. He was born in Khan Yunis, in what is called, but is wrongly called, I think, by now, a refugee camp within Gaza. He, at a pretty young age, 1985, so at 23, he already this is before Hamas was even established. He helped organize something called Al-Majad, which means glory in Arabic, which was an organization for jihad. And Al-Majad was a network of Islamic youths who tasked themselves with exposing Palestinian informants to Israel, informants who'd been recruited by Israel over the years. In 1987, when Hamas was formed, Al-Majad was kind of folded into it and became, if you will, part of its internal security cadre, given that they had now this expertise in rooting out and finding spies, informants. It's during this period and then solidified later on that Sinwar got the nickname of the butcher of Khan Yunis. They not only found informants are not informants, but they accused people of informants, but they also killed quite a few of them. And during this period, Sinwar was also involved in terrorist attacks against Israel and the killing of several Israeli soldiers. Indeed, in 1989, Sinwar was convicted, was arrested by the Israelis and convicted of murder of Palestinians and Israelis. And he got, for that, 4 life sentences. And he served in Israeli prison from 1989 on, right? Now, while he was in prison, he was like a mafia leader. He became the unequivocal leader of Palestinian terrorists incarcerated in Israel. He maintained a powerful sway over the other prisoners. He used all kinds of tactics of manipulation, abuse, and he had constant connections with outside the prison, just like a mafia dude would do. He would punish fellow prisoners that he suspected if they were informants, and continued kind of the killing of the people he thought were working with the Israelis. At some point, even managed to get 1,600 prisoners to participate in a hunger strike that he led. During this period in prison, he also spent a lot of time studying Israeli culture, Israeli society. He would read Israeli newspapers regularly. He studied Hebrew. He became fluent in Hebrew in the process. So this is an incredibly intelligent guy who really dedicated himself to understanding what he perceived as the enemy. Of course, during this time when Sinwar was in prison, a lot of things happened outside of prison. The Oslo Accords in the early 90s, the Second Intifada in the early 2000s, and the control of Gaza, the withdrawal of Israel from Gaza, right? The withdrawal from Israel, from all Israel and all Jews from Gaza, and then basically the Hamas eradicating the Palestinian Authority, killing them, kicking them out of Gaza, and establishing full control over Gaza. That was all done while Sinwar was in jail. In 2006, Hamas abducted an Israeli soldier who was stationed at a border crossing on guard duty, and they abducted him. And for years, there were discussions about getting him released and cutting a deal with Hamas to get him released. So this is 2006, before they had full control over Gaza. By 2007, they were the sole masters of Gaza. And anyway, ultimately, Egypt and Germany secured a deal for the release of Shalit, whereby he was released, and 1,000 terrorists, 1,000 prisoners within the Israeli system were released, and one of those was Sinwar. Indeed, his brother, Mohammed Sinwar, we'll talk about Mohammed Sinwar in a little bit. Mohammed Sinwar, who was one of the guards guarding Shalit, was one of the people who insisted that Sinwar be included in the exchange. Sinwar was one of the first set of Palestinian prisoners who returned to the Gaza Strip. When he arrived, he was hailed as a hero. I mean, his reputation as having controlled the prison and gained huge influence, and that reputation led to, within a few years, within a few months, so by April 2012, Sinwar is elected to Hamas Political Bureau and becomes one of the leaders of Hamas. During this time, he pulls the factions together by compromise and bloodshed, just like a good, a mafia don does. Continued, he learned from the Shalit's example, and from learning about Israeli society and understanding Israeli society. One of his real pushes within Hamas was to capture hostages, get Israeli hostages, get them into Gaza, because Israel valued its people so much that you could get massive concessions from the Israelis. He had also, during his years in prisons, basically become committed to the fact that there was no compromise with Israel. There was no recognition of Israel. There was no viable, call it, two-state solution. Sinwar came to understand that there was only one solution, and that was the complete destruction of Israel. In one of his public statements, public appearances, he said, "Gone is the time in which Hamas discusses recognition of Israel. The discussion now is about when we will wipe out Israel." And he really dedicated himself to the wiping out of Israel and doing whatever he could to weaken Israel and to find weaknesses in Israel and to use those weaknesses to try to destroy the state of Israel. He was also incredibly shrewd, a politician, if you will, so that didn't prevent him from negotiating with Israel. That didn't prevent him from putting out a Hamas charter that was mildly less radical than the original Hamas charter that just called for the wiping out of Israel. His belief is you could lull Israel to sleep. Part of their strategy, his grand strategy, was to lull Israel to sleep, to make them believe Hamas would negotiate, to make them believe Hamas was not interested in wiping Israel out, so that when the day came, they could actually execute on their grand strategy. In 2015, the United States designated him a terrorist. And in 2017, Sinwar was elected the head of Hamas in the Gaza Strip and head of its military wing. So from 2017 until really October 2023, Sinwar was committed to building up Hamas's military strength, improving its relationships with Islamist regimes around the world, primarily with Iran. He was responsible for building up the relationship between Hamas and Iran and getting Iran and Qatar to fund the massive investment in tunnels and weapons and training and weapon systems that went into the Hamas, establishment within Gaza. The money also went to, keeping the Gazan people from coming after Hamas. So a lot of money was distributed to them. Life for some people in Gaza was not that bad. But bulk of the money, without any question, went to building all those tunnels you've seen videos of and acquiring all those weapon systems. Sinwar was the mastermind of all of that, of the tunnel system, of the weapons systems, of the harassing Israel, but never not getting them to the point of a real war with Israel, which he knew he would lose. Building up to something more major, something more substantial that Sinwar hoped would rally those parts of the Arab world, those parts of the Muslim world that really wanted to see the destruction of Israel. Sinwar had also come to the conclusion that Israel was not ready for an all-out fight, that Israel didn't want an all-out fight, that Israel could compromise, negotiate, make a deal. That is ultimately the history of Israel with Hamas up until October 7th. And that, again, if hostages were taken, Israel would prioritize the hostages above all else. And that leads us, of course, to October 7th, 2023, which is a plan executed by Sinwar. We talked a few days ago about the documents that we received that Israeli intelligence, I guess, leaked to the New York Times about kind of the planning for October 7th, about the fact that it was fully coordinated, if you will, with the Iranians, and the attempt to try to get the Iranians more involved, try to get Hezbollah more involved, try to make this a whole regional attack on Israel. And that really Sinwar was running out of time. Israel was going to get these laser weapons that would make his rockets a lot less effective. He was worried that his plans would leak and the Israelis would be ready for it. And Sinwar, in spite of the fact that Iran would not give him the full commitment to fully endorse and fully support what he did, launched October 7th massacre. And notice the explicit goal of that attack was to get as many hostages as possible. Kill, rape, pillage, put the fear of Allah into the Israelis, destroy their morale, destroy their spirit, try to inspire by doing so. Think about the sickness that this involves. Try to inspire by doing so the other Islamist regimes around the Middle East to ultimately attack Israel, inspired by the massacre, inspired by the death, inspired by the destruction. But to guarantee their success, take hostages. Take hostages because you know the Israelis will not let the hostages die. They will compromise, they will sell out in order to get the hostages released. And that was the strategy. And the strategy was not completely wrong, but Israel responded, and I think the trauma to Israeli society was such that Israel responded in a much, much tougher way than Sinwar expected, and that I expected. I didn't expect the kind of response that we received. I still think it wasn't tough enough, but it was certainly tougher than what I expected. If you go back and listen to my shows from early in September, you'll see that I didn't expect them to be this good. And this has led ultimately to the complete destruction, or the almost complete destruction of Gaza, the destruction of the entire Hamas, or almost the entire Hamas leadership. And the one missing piece, really, the big missing piece to date, was Sinwar. As we said, the political leadership lost its leader in Tehran. They also lost a significant leader in Beirut a few months ago. And then a few months ago, they also lost the military leader under Sinwar, Daf, who was assassinated. And then finally today, Sinwar was killed in Rafah, in the Gaza Strip. Basically, at this point, there's very little senior leadership of Hamas left. There are three main players probably left. One is Mohammed Sinwar, Sinwar's brother, who is in a leadership position as being kind of Sinwar's number two, and is still there, is still alive, and is going to try to get Hamas regrouped. There are two kind of regional leaders, one from the Rafah area and one from the Khan Yunis, not the Khan Yunis area, but from the Gaza City area, that are still alive. The head of the Khan Yunis division, if you want to call it, was killed with Sinwar. They were killed together in the same, this morning, in the same attack. So Hamas has lost thousands and thousands of its fighters, and they have lost much of its leadership team. A significant majority of its leadership team has been killed, and certainly now they still have in Qatar Mashal. Mashal is I guess their political leader, will be, and is probably Hamas's leader de facto now that Sinwar is gone. And they still have a team of people in Qatar. I mean, it would be amazing if the Americans today ordered the Qataris to kick Hamas out of Qatar. I mean, that would set everything in motion to complete destruction and I think surrender of Hamas. They won't do that. The U.S. won't do that. You remember, the U.S. has massive influence and power over the Qataris. Our largest military base in the Middle East is in Qatar, but they won't do that. All right, so that is where we are. Hamas has dwindling leadership talent, if you will, but still thousands of armed fighters. I want to say a little bit about how it happened this morning. This was not an example of the brilliant efficacy of Israeli intelligence. This is not the same as the killing of Hania or even the killing of Daf, who was the military head of Hamas a few months ago, where they basically knew he was coming out of the tunnels and was going to meet in a meeting with one of the other senior people in Hamas, and they bombed them both. Sinwar was killed today, if you will, by accident. So we're not getting a cover story. This is real and very real. And you've got pictures and you can see who killed him. And, I don't think there's anything mysterious about how he died. This is not like how they killed Nasrallah, which was a targeted mission to kill Nasrallah. They knew exactly what they were doing. They knew exactly where he was. And they used the kind of bombs necessary to kill him. This is an example of what happens when you occupy territory. This is an example of what happens when you actually try to gain control over a place. Once you gain control, you start bumping into the bad guys, and you start eradicating them. In this case, a unit of Israeli troops on patrol, of infantry on patrol, saw armed men in a house. So they confirmed that these were not Israeli armed men, that these were Hamas operatives. Didn't know at this point who they were. There were 3 of them there. Instead of trying to break into the house and get into a firefight with them, they asked for a tank that was in the vicinity to basically shell the house. The tank, which was also not... it's kind of the tank was operated by... Here's the link to me personally. The tank was operated by students in the tank officer school. So when you go into the tank corps, you do basic training, and then you're trained on tanks, and you're assigned in a division, and you train on tanks, and you train in a particular position. You could be a gunner, you can be a loader, the guy who loads the thing into the. You could do a driver. There are 3 positions other than the tank commander. And typically, after basic training, you're assigned a particular role. And I was in basic training for tanks, and I was assigned the role of a gunner. And I was trained to be a gunner of a tank and got to blow up a lot of things and shoot a lot of tank stuff in training. And was stationed in the Golan Heights after training. And at that point, I was asked to go to tank commanding school. And in tank command school, you basically learn how to be a tank commander. But it turns out then when a war breaks out, the people in tank commanding school form their own tank division, if you will, and they go out and fight. And if you were a gunner before, you become a gunner and you get a tank commander, who's a real tank commander. And it turned out that the tank that destroyed the house that killed Sinwar was from tank commanding school, which I felt a lot of sympathy towards because I was in that school. I was trained as a tank commander. I dropped out. Those of you confused, I thought Yaron was in military intelligence. What's this? During tank commanding school, I basically had just unbelievable pain in my ankle. And a shooting pain down my leg, but primarily in my ankle. And I already knew I had a ruptured disc before I went to tank commanding school, but I thought I don't want to miss the opportunity to become a tank commander. So I went to the school anyway, but during the first week of the tank commanding school, I was just in agony. I mean, unbelievable pain, the worst pain I've had in my life. I could barely stand. But I couldn't, I was committed to doing this, so I stuck through it. and stuck through the week. And then by the end of the week, I was breaking in. But I couldn't get to see the medical doctor. It's the military. Incredibly inefficient. Very hard to go see a medical doctor. Couldn't see a medical doctor. Tried a number of times, and ultimately, made up some story about my relatives or whatever in trouble or something, and got a pass to go see my relatives, I think for the weekend, a weekend pass. And basically went there, went straight to my doctor. He checked me out and immediately sent me to the hospital, where they pumped me with steroids into my back, cortisone shots into my back. By that point, I'd lost all feeling from my knee down. I didn't feel anything. And basically what I had was two big ruptured discs, L4, L5, L5S1. For those of you who know, the two lowest discs were ruptured. They were pressing on the nerve. I'd lost feeling from my knee down. And ultimately, I had to have surgery, and I did. And that made me ineligible for combat duty, which sent me to military intelligence, and that's my story. Anyway, that's a long story. But the basic point is these kids in tank commanding school who were in a random tank in the Rafah area blew up this building. And then the soldiers who were the infantry who had called them in entered the building, and they discovered 3 bodies. And when they looked carefully at one of the bodies, he looked like Sinwar. And Sinwar used to have this watch that people recognized him by, and he had the watch. It's kind of weird when you're trying to hide and you keep the watch that everybody knows you had. They identified him as Sinwar. They called in the commanders. People came. There's tons of video of this, by the way. You can find video and photos of Sinwar dead in the rubble. There's video of them taking him out of the rubble. And basically, at that point, there was a lot of excitement, but they wanted to be 100% sure. So they took DNA evidence. They took teeth, because they had dental records from when he was in Israeli jail. And they took fingerprints, which they had from when he was in Israeli jail. And within a few hours, it was clear that he just didn't just look like Sinwar. He was Sinwar, and they'd actually killed the head of Hamas. Now, this all happened in Rafah. Rafah, this is the area that the Biden administration told Israel, you cannot go in there. You shouldn't go in there. It'll be a disaster if you go in there. This is the area that many, many military experts in the U.S. and the West, even some in Israel, said, oh, no, don't go to Rafah. Rafah is dangerous. A lot of Israelis will die. We can't do Rafah. Rafah's too hard. I mean, thank goodness that Israel stuck to its gun, didn't listen to Kamala Harris, the military genius, who told Israel they shouldn't go to Rafah. And they went. And as a consequence of that, of course, I think the whole operation has changed. They basically cut off the supply rights for Hamas because they've cut them off on the tunnels that went into Egypt. They've basically taken the major pieces of land that Hamas operated on. They've taken away. They've taken away a lot of their entry-exit points from the tunnel systems. They've destroyed a lot of the tunnels. And now they have forced people like Sinwar out into the open, or at least into buildings where they can be observed because Israel's now on the ground. You cannot replace holding ground in warfare. This idea that Israel could go in, clean out an area, then retreat, and then go into another area, clean it out, and then retreat. And then when Hamas came back, you go back in, clean it up, and you announce when you're going in and out because you tell the civilians to evacuate. You can't win a war like that. But by occupying a territory, figuring out where all these bad guys are, figuring out where all they, who they are, you can actually go in and you can find them, you can kill them, you can destroy them, and you can destroy their organization, right? So, again, not a huge intelligence victory, and there's a little bit of a disappointment that I feel that it's not an intelligence victory, because it still suggests that Israel probably does not know where the rest of the hostages are. And this is still a big problem. There's still 101 hostages, about some estimates, anywhere from 35 to 50 of them, maybe more, maybe 60 of them already dead. But so there maybe there's 50, 60 hostages still alive. And, if Israel had known this was Sinwar and killed him on purpose, then I'd say, ooh, their intelligence is improving. Maybe they also know where the hostages are. By the way, when they checked, before they told the tank to fire on the building, they checked to make sure there were no hostages in the building with him. So there's still the issue of the hostages. Sinwar's brother is still alive. There's still a number of commanders who are still alive. There's still a vast array of tunnels that Israel has not yet destroyed. Partially, they're careful to destroy them because they worry that there are hostages inside. And now, I think, the pressure's on to find those hostages and find them quickly. Now, Netanyahu went on TV today appealing to the Gazan people and to Hamas to basically saying, if you lay down your weapons and you release the hostages, those people who release the hostages, we will be allowed, in a sense, free exit out of Gaza. That is, we won't kill you. And appealing to the Gazans to end this, to stop this, it's over. Now, I'm skeptical whether any of that will work. Again, these are jihadis, at least some of them are. But it's going to work on the margin. Look, whenever somebody like Sinwar dies, it is an incredibly demoralizing effect, particularly given how many of their commanders have died. So it's going to be demoralizing. But I do not think this will end Hamas, and I do not think this will end the war. Now, it could lead to a deal. It could open up, Hamas has been the real obstacle to a deal. It could open up some avenues for a deal, maybe hostages, and you let some of these leftover Hamas commanders and their troops out of Gaza, send them to Sudan or something, was suggested. Mashal in Qatar might be afraid that he will, somebody will take his billions of dollars and destroy his quality of life, and he might put pressure on the rest of the Hamas leadership to cut a deal with Israel. So there might be a deal in play. I don't think the best way to end this war is through a deal. I think surrender is what Israel should demand, unequivocal, uncompromising, without any terms. Release the hostages and surrender now. It could lead to some Gazans releasing some hostages because they say, Sinwar's dead, we're afraid. So at the margin, you could see hostages released as a consequence, or more informants, right? Remember, Sinwar was an expert. His shtick was finding informants, right? Finding informants. So Sinwar is, Sinwar, there might be now people might come out as informants who might not have done while Sinwar was alive, who might inform on where some of these hostages are, wanting this nightmare to be over. Look, for the average Gazan, for all Gazans, this is a nightmare. Now, it's a nightmare most of them deserve, but it's a nightmare. And I'm sure many, many, many of them are fed up. They've had it. They've had enough of this nightmare, and they would like it to end. So it is going to be interesting to see what happens in the next few hours and then in the next few days. Of course, we're all waiting to see what happens with Israel's response to Iran. I would have expected it to be tonight. Now it might be delayed. I don't know why exactly, but maybe they want to savor this win before they go for the next. Maybe they want to give the Israeli population a breather before they attack Iran and then expect a retaliation from Iran. I don't know. But I wouldn't be surprised now if it got delayed. It's already been delayed way too much. I mean, I've told you what I think about that. I think it's absurd and ridiculous that it's taken so long. Ridiculous. And so Iran might get delayed. They might also want to wait and see. Maybe Hamas surrenders. And maybe if Hamas surrenders, Israel just doesn't attack Iran. Or maybe there's some global deal where Iran puts pressure on Hamas to surrender, and in exchange Israel doesn't bomb Iran. I don't know. So we might see a few days of negotiating in the background, right? I can see the Biden administration saying, oh, yes, this is fun. We've got another opportunity to negotiate. We love negotiations. We love compromises. We love diplomacy. Diplomacy is the golden word, right? So it could very well be that the diplomacy will be the catchword. They'll also try to maybe cut a deal with Lebanon and finalize the thing with Hezbollah. Who knows exactly what's going to happen? But I wouldn't be surprised if there's some negotiating in the background that's starting right now, driven by the State Department. But I could be wrong, and F-35s could be on the way to Tehran right now. That would be my hope, my wish. But who knows? Who knows? I think that if Israel really went after Iran right now, if Israel just unleashed on Iran, just unleashed on them, and somehow, and I don't know if they have the capacity, but let's assume they do, somehow destroyed their capacity to really inflict significant harm on Israel, really, maybe then Iran would come to their senses and start hustling towards a deal. In other words, towards Hamas surrendering. I mean, that's what I would do tonight. But then nothing I've recommended has really been done. So, I mean, maybe in a moderate form, not in my radical form. I don't think Hamas is going to surrender. Hezbollah did not surrender after we killed Nasrallah, and Nasrallah, in many respects, was an even more important figure within Hezbollah than Sinwar was within Hamas. I mean, Nasrallah had been there for 30 years, the leader, and he was just this giant. Sinwar was a fiery orator, was charismatic and important, and certainly the key player behind October 7th. But he didn't play the same role as Nasrallah did in Hezbollah. Hezbollah hasn't surrendered even then. So I don't expect Hamas to just unilaterally surrender. I'd be surprised if that happened. But if Iran feels like it's cornered, that could lead Hamas to surrender. And that's what Israel needs to bring about, really. All right, what else can I tell you about Sinwar? I'm just looking over the questions. If anything directly related to this. Yeah, I don't see anything directly related to this. Okay. So congrats, it's a day to celebrate. One more evil bastard dead. And that would be really, really good. That's really, really good. But more work to be done. More work to be done. And the next work to be done is basically the destruction of the Iranian regime. There cannot be peace in the Middle East until this Iranian regime is gone, until these mullahs are gone. Now, whether Israel has the capacity or the will or the desire to actually kill these leaders and bring about a revolution in Iran, which would replace them, I doubt. But you're not going to get peace in the Middle East until that happens. The Iranians need to be taken out of the equation or become friends of Israel. And they could become friends of Israel if the mullahs are taken out. Great opportunity. Just great opportunity. I mean, their tentacles. One big tentacle was Hezbollah. Another big tentacle was Hamas. they're finished. They're dead, they're destroyed. Now, you still got the Houthis, we'll get to Houthis in a minute. Now you've got the leadership in Tehran. I think they feel weak. They definitely feel vulnerable. Now's the time to take them out. Now's the time to take them out. The Shah played it both ways. The Shah sold Israel oil, was friendly towards Israel. Israeli consultants were in Iran. There was a lot of stuff going on between Israel and Iran. But he also pretended to be hostile in order not to alienate the Saudis and the other Arab regimes. The environment right now is such that the Saudis want peace with Israel, and an Iranian regime that was peaceful towards Israel would be embraced, and therefore peaceful also towards the Saudis. Wow, I mean, that's a new Middle East, and I think everybody would be happy with that. Everybody would be happy with that. So you got to take out the Iranian regime. You got to replace it. You got to find a way to let the Iranians internally get rid of these guys. All right, get rid of these guys. Syria has no power. Syria is not significant. I'm not sure. One of the Freeman says, and Syria, but I'm not sure in what context. But Syria is insignificant. Indeed, it's been interesting to watch what Israel's been doing. So over the last few days, I don't think this has been covered in the media. Over the last few days, Israel has been basically entering Syria, clearing mines, moving, kind of creating barriers, moving, if you will, the border. This is in the northeast of Israel, northeastern part of the Golan Heights, and basically preparing the ground for an Israeli incursion into Syria. And what Israel would do, I don't have a map with me, but what they would do is, it appears they are setting the groundwork for, is Israel going into Syria, crossing the Syrian-Lebanese border, and encircling Hezbollah, basically coming at them from the back, coming at them from the northeast, and taking and basically cutting them off, and with that kind of movement, basically adding to the complete destruction of Hezbollah. So that was part of. So Syria's like, it's not even a state. It can't even do anything. What's it going to do, right? And the Russians are there, and the Russians are not doing anything. So the Russians were on, one of the stories coming out was the Russians were on this part of the border. They had observers on this part of the border, and basically the Israelis told the Russians to leave, and the Russians left, and Israel has been operating inside Syria, and the Russians are just letting them. There's a deal between Russia and Israel where Russia lets Israel basically do whatever they want in Syria. What Russia gets in return is not completely clear to me. Maybe Israel not selling weapons to Ukraine. Maybe that's the deal. I don't know. But there's some deal where Israel gets free reign in Syria and Russia gets something. Not clear what. Not clear what. I hope not too much. I hope not too much. Okay, just on the Houthis. Houthis in Yemen. Israel's bombed them twice. The United States bombs them periodically, right? Doesn't do much. They are obstructing the shipping lanes of the world. This is what the U.S. Navy was built for, was to annihilate the Houthis so that they couldn't constrict and stop the shipping lanes. But the United States has done very little. The Houthis still launch missiles towards ships traveling through the Red Sea and towards the U.S. Navy itself. Yesterday, for the first time, really for the first time in a very long time, I think for the first time in 7 years, a B-52, no, sorry, not B-52s, God, it's a different era. B-2 stealth bombers, B-2 stealth bombers were used by the American military. First time since 2017, I think, when they were used in Libya. These are stealth bombers, massive planes, but they cannot be detected by radar. Not that the Houthis have particularly sophisticated radar. And they flew all the way to Yemen, and they unloaded on 5 sites of weapon storage sites of the Houthis with 2,000-pound bunker-busting bombs. Now, this is not the big one, the big bunker-busting bomb that the United States would use if it was going to destroy Iran's nuclear capabilities, is a 30,000-pound bomb that the B-52 can carry. The 32,000-pound bomb can go 100 feet into a mountain and then explode. And then explode. So that's the bomb you would have to use to destroy the Iranian nuclear program. So the United States used B-2s, stealth bombers, on a mission that the Navy's F-35s or F-18s could have done easily, right? They can carry 2,000-pound bombs. They could have bombed these areas. F-35s are maybe not as stealthy as the B-2, but stealthy. But I'm not sure you need much stealth because the Houthis are not particularly good at, anti-aircraft carriers, so anti-aircraft batteries. So why did the U.S. use a B-2? Why did it fly a B-2 all the way from the United States, all the way to Yemen, to bomb some weapon storage sites, which could have been bombed by lesser airplanes? And I really do think this is, as Capitalist Spy says, this is sending a message. This is to tell Iran, if we want to, if we decide to, you won't even see it coming. We can bring those B-2s. You will never know they're there. And we could drop not 2,000-pound bombs, not 5,000-pound bombs, 35,000-pound bombs, and annihilate your capacity to produce nuclear weapons, to produce, to fire rockets, because the rockets are all stored in these mountains. The United States has the bombs and has the plane to deliver them. Like a 35,000-pound bomb, these bunker-busting bombs cannot be put on a regular plane, right? So it's a sign, it's a message. Maybe it's part of why Israel was waiting, because maybe the Americans said, hey, we're going to send a message to Iran. Wait, I don't know. A different interpretation would say, the B-52, the B-2s, I don't know why I keep saying B-52. The B-2 pilots have been bored. They feel left out. They haven't participated in a military action in 7 years. They want some action, so they threw them a bone. I guess that's an alternative explanation. But yes, B-2s were placed in action, did fly all the way to Yemen, did destroy, Houthi, in other words, Iranian weapon facilities, including long-range missiles and others. So that's a win. It's just not a win that necessitated B-2. But it is cool. It's a cool plane. If you've ever seen pictures of it, it's like a sci-fi plane. It looks sci-fi. And, I don't think any country in the world has quite the capacities of a B-2. And it is definitely one of the United States' comparative advantages, in terms of warfare. All right. Anything else? Anything else we want to talk about? I'll remind you, just a quick reminder, we got 10 minutes for the first hour. The goal for the first hour is $250, so we're about $49 short, so please consider getting us to the goal of $250 for the first hour, and then we'll take each hour as they come, one at a time. So please consider supporting. I think earlier we tried to get going a $5 sticker day, $5 Monday. No, it's not Monday, it's a Thursday. $5 Monday, $5 Thursday stickers, $5 Thursday stickers. So please consider doing that. That way we can get the numbers. We've got almost 200 people watching. There should be enough people there who would like to trade value for value by sending in a sticker in a minute. So David says, David, if you're having trouble with the super chat, then just misspell a bunch of words, and I think it'll let you ask it that way. But David, yeah, like the show. If you like the show, that'd be great. It really helps the algorithm if you like the show. Little thumbs up thing over there. All right, let's talk about something completely different. Let's talk about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And David, I will get to your question once you ask it, but it's easier if it's in a super chat because then it gets saved. It gets saved. I can't see it otherwise. So I know you're going to get angry at me again, but you know, what can I do? There was a really good story in, of all places, the New York Times magazine. It's the New York Times, I think it's a Sunday magazine, this last weekend. And I know you guys, many of you, think that's a contradiction in terms, but it's true. And the story in the New York Times is basically a detailed analysis. I mean, it's detailed. This is a long story. Many pages with pictures and everything. A lot of investigative reporting, a lot of effort went into this, and it looks like they covered this over years. And I know many of you are in Michigan, so this is relevant because this is an expose of the DEI program at the University of Michigan. The title of the story, and I highly recommend if you're interested in this stuff to read it because it's very informative. The University of Michigan doubled down on DEI. What went wrong? A decade and a quarter of $1 billion later, students or faculty are more frustrated than ever. More frustrated than ever. So while Ann says that the New York Times thinks DEI is fine, and that might be true, and I'm sure it is true, this expose about the University of Michigan is an expose about how DEI screws everything up. And how you spend the money, you put the resources in, you build infrastructure and bureaucracies, and what you get is greater racial hostility, people not getting along, more frustration, more hatred, more isolation. And indeed, even among many within the left at the University of Michigan, which is almost redundant because pretty much everybody's of the left at the University of Michigan, you get people who are, roll their eyes every time DEI is mentioned, who are upset at DEI, who don't, don't like it. So while Michigan officials celebrate DEI constantly, the students, including leftist activists, roll their eyes when you mention DEI. The reporter here writes, quote, I met students with a wide range of backgrounds and perspectives. Not one expressed any particular enthusiasm for Michigan's DEI initiative. Where some found it shallow, others found it stifling. They rolled their eyes at the profusion of course offerings that revolve around identity and oppression. The DEI-themed emails they frequently receive but rarely read. Michigan's own data suggests that in striving to become, I'm reading for the article, to become more diverse and equitable, the school has become less inclusive. In a survey released in late 2022, students and faculty members reported a less positive campus climate than at the program's start, and less of a sense of belonging. Students were less likely to interact with people of a different race or religion or with different politics. The exact kind of engagement DEI programs, in theory, are meant to foster. Instead, I continue with the article, Michigan's DEI efforts have created a powerful conceptual framework for students and faculty grievances and formidable bureaucratic mechanisms to pursue them. Every day, campus complaints and academic disagreements, professors and students told me, were now cast as crises of inclusion and harm, each demanding some further administrative intervention or expansion. On a campus consumed with institutional self-criticism, seemingly the only thing to avoid a true reckoning was DEI itself. DEI here is absolutely well-intentioned, extremely thoughtful in conception and design, said Mark Bernstein, a lawyer and a Democrat who sits at the University Board of Regents. But it's so virtuous that it's escaped accountability in a lot of ways. There's a compliment for you. In other words, DEI at the University of Michigan is blowing up in their face. Michigan has spent more money than any other university system on DEI. So Jennifer and Robert and all of you Michiganers in Michigan, whose tax dollars are spent on the University of Michigan, this is where it's going. It's going to tear people apart. It's going to create tribes, to create pressure groups, to create identity groups, because that's what DEI is about at the end of the day. It's about identitarianism. It's about declaring one's identity. And by thus excluding other people with other identities. And thus creating tribalism in spades. Now, Michigan was so excited about DEI is that in the 20-teens they had DEI 1.0. And recently they embraced DEI 2.0. And it's just been massive. They've hired huge numbers of administrators, right? And this is at a time where the state of Michigan, through a ballot initiative, has banned the use of racial preferences. The Supreme Court has banned the use of racial preferences in college admissions. And so Michigan is trying to do all kinds of other stuff in order to get to their goals, right? DEI 1.0, the school promise would be rigorous and evidence-based. Each of the university's dozens of units from medical school down to the university archives was instructed to devise its own plan. Many set up minutiae DEI offices of their own, miniature. The initial planning ultimately yielded nearly 2,000 action items across campus. I'm reading for the article. A tribute to Michigan's belief in the power of bureaucratic process to promote change. It's greater bureaucracy. That'll do it. God. They created a new Central Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, led by a senior guy that tracked everything and documented everything. The president of the university promised to make DEI one of his top priorities. At a campus assembly in October 2016, they pledged $85 million in new spending for DEI to transform the campus. Now, students didn't particularly care about all of this. There were student protests and demonstrations, and the identitarianism on campus only increased, only accelerated, and DEI, in a sense, legitimized all this. The number of people employed by DEI kept accelerating, kept growing, right? It led to, ultimately, given the DEI 1.0 was not good enough, did not achieve what they wanted, they launched DEI 2.0. And doubled up on everything. Personnel, money, programs, bureaucracy, and everything else. And again, things only deteriorated, things only got worse. And of course, we know this. We know this. Central planning, bureaucracies, and more importantly, the ideas of identitarianism, the ideas of self-identifying based on a group, ideas that lead people to hate others, to be in conflict with them, to recognize them as being in another group as opposed to my group. And that only creates less cohesion, not more cohesion. Of course, the BLM was not an easy time from the University of Michigan. Of course, the University of Michigan went all in on BLM's side, and they basically used this opportunity again to redouble their commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and to really bolster it. This is true in the law school. This is true across the entire University of Michigan system. And of course, October 7th led to massive demonstrations, sit-ins, and problems. Right? So, New York Times has this massive story about this and about how it's all gone wrong. The DEI helped fuel a culture of grievances. Michigan has struggled to improve black enrollment, and students overall feel less included, not more. And after October 7th, the whole bureaucracy failed. And this is causing people to rethink. Now, if the New York Times is covering this as a rethink, that's a big deal. That is a big deal. Because remember, as somebody said, New York Times is all in as DEI. And yet the New York Times is saying, no, it's not working in Michigan. And backing it up with, this is a long story. I'm just scrolling down. I mean, this is going to take you a while to read. DEI 2.0, by the way, was launched in 2023, so last year. And with 2.0, you know exactly what's going to happen, right? More DEI training, more anti-racism dialogue, more DEI consultants for every university unit, more sub-plans and action items and everything else. So just more, and all of it is backfiring. There really is a sense in which the particular form in which woke has taken since the establishment of BLM, since the riots of BLM in 2020, the particular way in which it's being pushed and articulated, that particular way is dying. It's, I call it peak woke, I guess. Now, I'm not saying peak woke means it's going to go away. Peak woke means it's probably not going to get crazier. It might subside in certain areas. It's not going to go away. And in many respects, peak woke suggests its entrenchment in certain places. In some, some departments, some HR departments, woke, DEI is already fully entrenched. They changed the name, they'll call it something else, but it's going to be almost impossible for them to walk away from it. This is going to happen at universities. A lot of universities are going to have to experiment with something different. They're going to have to walk away from an explicit DEI program, and they're going to have to figure something else. I mean, one of the challenges they're finding after September 7th is a massive rise of real anti-Semitism. I mean, we're talking about swastikas in the schools and threats to Jewish students and threats to Hillel, and, I mean, real anti-Semitism. And you could link this directly to DEI, and shockingly, the New York Times is doing that. And of course, Michigan DEI leaders don't care about Jews. Don't care about Israel, quite the contrary. So, for example, in January this year, a committee of Michigan DEI leaders gave the school's Martin Luther King Spirit Award to a pro-Palestinian student group and its leader, a senior named Salma Hamani, the group that issued a statement on October 7th, right after the murder happened, justifying the murder of Israeli citizens. This is what DEI leads to. And a lot of adults in the room are looking at this and saying, wait a minute. We thought like DEI was just going to be getting people who disagree to get along and you know, not using race and kind of colorblind society, you know. So a lot of adults are waking up and saying, whoa, what is going on here? The civil rights officials at the federal Department of Education, we're talking about a Biden federal Department of Education, have found that Michigan has systematically mishandled student complaints over an 18-month period ending February. Out of 67 complaints of harassment or discrimination based on national origin or ancestry that the officials reviewed, an overwhelming majority involved allegations of anti-Semitism. So it turns out that they're mishandling all the anti-Semitism complaints. So the Palestinians, again, pro-Palestinian groups celebrating, taking advantage of DEI and excluding the Jewish students from kind of DEI protection, DEI attitudes, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. Classes have been derailed since October 7th because of the pro-Palestinian side. And this is causing people to really, really question DEI at the University of Michigan. And this is big, guys. This is big. It's this is the biggest DEI program in the country. More money has been spent in Michigan than anywhere. And people are unhappy about it. People are unhappy about it. And maybe, these are the beginnings of the grumblings that lead to maybe down the road some reform. You have to challenge DEI philosophically. You have to challenge the whole identitarian, so-called anti-colonial, intersectionality issues. You have to deal with them directly. But it really does seem like, at least that they're crazy extreme, these things are going to be reined in the next few years, probably no matter who wins the election. Probably no matter who wins the election. Although the left is always energized, I think, if Trump wins, is going to be energized. All right, that's DEI. We got two more stories. Okay, crime stats. So I noticed today on Twitter a lot of stories about the fact that the FBI has restated their violent crime data for 2022. And whereas before the stats had shown had declined in crime, violent crime, of 2%, 2 point something percent, it now showed an increase of 4.5%. And of course, this was used by all the Twitter accounts on the right of saying, see, crime is increasing. We told you so. You know, it's getting worse. Biden, it's getting worse under Biden. It's always been worse under Biden. And they go on and on and on. And this is proof that Trump lies and everybody's lying and crime is getting worse and so on. So I decided, because I like these data things, to go investigate. And of course, this is all manipulated by the Biden administration. They want us to believe that crime is down. Here's the thing about this, and this same thing happened with the jobs report when it was, when there was an adjustment made in the jobs report that made it much worse. That is, a lot fewer jobs were created. Is if you were the Biden administration and you were trying to convince Americans that everything was safe, and you were manipulating the numbers in order to convince them that they were better off and things are safe and there's no violent crime and all of that, you wouldn't release a revision of the number 3 weeks before the election. That would be insane. It would be crazy to release it 3 weeks before the election. You would wait until just after the election, and then you'd release the revision. The same with the job numbers. If it was manipulated in order to make Biden's economy look better than it really was, why would you revise it, 6, 7 weeks before the election? You would wait until after the election to revise it. So I'll start with that, right? That if this is the Biden administration manipulating the numbers for the purpose of the election, then they're even more stupid than I ever thought they were. I mean, they're stupid at a level that is hard to believe. And this should basically make it clear that if you believe that, you can't believe any conspiracy theory. Because if they bungle this so badly, how could any conspiracy theory be true? Because they don't have the capacity. They're too stupid. So as I said, I looked more carefully because, it seems suspicious that the Biden administration was manipulating the data. And it turns out that basically if you can find FBI data going back to 1976, and it's revised every year. That is, more information keeps coming in. What they do at the end of the year, when they give you the first estimate, it's always an estimate, is some areas have not reported, and they make an estimate about what they think that is going to be, and they report that, and then when the actual numbers come in, they adjust it. They make an adjustment, and usually they underestimate. I'm looking at the numbers every year; it's underestimated. So they almost always underestimate the number of murders in this case, because murders is the best metric to look at, because murders almost always are reported. You can count the bodies. There's some question about whether something is categorized as a murder or categorized as a manslaughter or whatever. But it's, of all the violent crime metrics, it's probably the most objective. It's probably the most accurate. So you can actually go back and find murder numbers, the number of people murdered in the United States every single year. You can go back to 1976 and what was the original number, and then what was it revised to. And you can look at 2022, and you can find that indeed it was revised from 20,152 to 21,781. It's an increase in the number of murders committed in 2022 of 7.5%. That's the adjustment. But if you look historically, that's one of the lowest rates ever. Usually the adjustments are much bigger. In 2019, for example, the adjustment went from, and of course the adjustment is made 2 years later. 2 years later? 2022 is made in 2024. It's a year after they published the first set of results, right? They published the first set of results for 2022 and 2023, and then in 2024 we get the adjustment. So if you look at that, then 7.5% adjustment is like one of the lowest ever. It was 18% in 2020. Murders were 18.464 originally, and then when you counted the adjustment, they shot up to 22.510. Indeed, 2020 saw more murders in the United States than really any year in our recorded history. The closest year that comes to that is the peak is 1991. In 1991, there were 24,703 murders, again, after adjustment. And that year, the adjustment was at 18%. So, first, even after the adjustment for 2022, murders are down from 2020. Sorry, 2020 is below 1991. What am I saying? 2020 is below 91. 91 is 24,000. 2020 is 22,000. So it's the highest since 22,000 is the highest since 1994, where it was 23,000. So there has been a decline in crime, in violent crime, in murders, for example, since 2020. Now, there's been a sharp increase since 2019. But first of all, let's remember 2020, Trump was still president. And yeah, 2019 was pretty low, although 2019 was relatively high as compared to the real low. The low, I think the lowest it's been, let me just check this. The lowest it's been ever since 1976. The lowest murder rate since 1976 in the United States was actually in 2014, 2 years before Trump was elected. And yet Trump was elected on a platform of carnage in the streets of America. I've told you many times that it was some of the less violent crime eras in American history. So 2014 was the last number where it was really, really, really low. And then it increased in 2015. It increased in 2016. And it increased in 2017. It kind of stayed flat. 2017 went down a little bit in 2019. And then it shot up in 2020. So, and then since 2020, it's come down. Came down in 2021. It stayed flat. Basically, from 2021 to 2022, it's flat. 21,462 versus 21,781. So technically, it went up a little bit from 21 to 22. Basically, it's flat. So what you have here is a reduction. Numbers, I think, will show that 2024, I think, so far, will be way down and actually be lower than, or in the ballpark, it appears, of 2019. So murder rates in 2024 will be lower maybe than 2019. So the whole story about crime going up, the whole story about murder going up, that the right keeps pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing, it's just not true. It's just not true. And the new revised FBI numbers do not suggest otherwise. They don't change that fact. Every other source of information about murder rates confirms the fact that in 2023 and 2024, murder rates are significantly down. So I'm just doing this because you're going to hear a lot of stories. This is going to churn. This is going to churn through, and people are going to make the argument that, see, this revision is proof that. But all of this leads to, and it's also about the Trump economy versus the Biden economy and all that crap. Part of this also reflects the fact, the reality, that presidents are not particularly responsible for murder rates. Like, you guys all like Ronald Reagan, right? But during Ronald Reagan, the murder rates was much higher. I mean, dramatically higher than during the Obama presidency. I mean, Obama was president during one of the, I'm looking at the numbers from 2008 to 2016. I mean, some of the least violent periods in American history. Does that make Obama a great president? I mean, George H.W., the original George Bush father, I mean, his administration was during the most violent period in American history. Literally, the most violent period in American history was the period of 88 to 92. And then Bill Clinton, particularly in his second term, sees a massive decline in murder rates. Now, how much of that do you think is attributed to who the president is? It has nothing to do with who the president is. I mean, if this was true, Obama would be the greatest president in American history. So, I don't know. Stop it. Stop buying into this nonsense. It really is nonsense on a grand scale. On a grand scale. And, you know, use your own mind. Don't accept all the garbage statistics people throw at you. And then think, okay, even if these statistics are true, even if it's right, even if there's carnage in the streets of America, is the president responsible for that fact? Whoever the president happens to be. All right, what am I doing here? All right, final story. This is an uplifting story. This is a great story. This is really good. This is on Elon Musk. The good Elon Musk. The Elon Musk we love to love. The Elon Musk we love to love, right? So Elon is an extraordinary entrepreneur. He's an extraordinary business leader. He's an extraordinary manager and allocator of resources, an extraordinary motivator of people. I mean, I think that he's an extraordinary hirer of engineers. And I think part of that is he hires great people and then he inspires them. He's just an extraordinary human being if he's stuck to his lane, right? Anyway, you might know that as part of X, as part of Twitter, Musk has invested in, God, what is this? I can't access the story. Basically, is launching a AI company, right? As part of Twitter, and as part of the AI project, they have built this massive data center. Let me just. I thought I had a story, but it won't actually open. Let me see if I can get. God, this is crazy. The kind of. Anyway, he's built this in Tennessee. He's built it in Memphis. I'm opening up. I'm searching for this, and I get. This is a good example. I get this headline in a story. Elon Musk Memphis AI data center raises pollution. Not what I'm looking for, guys. I'm just looking for some data on this data center. I thought I had it, and yeah. Anyway, Elon Musk has basically built the world's fastest AI data center. It's got a gargantuan portable power generator, and it's just unbelievable, right? It's got 100,000 liquid-cooled H100 GPUs on board. It's the most powerful supercomputer on planet Earth. And here is what, God, that one is shutting me out as well. All right, this is what the CEO of NVIDIA has to say about this. And look, the CEO of NVIDIA is an amazing guy, right? He's built this company, and he's made this company one of the world's leading companies. This is huge, right? So this is not some minor person speaking about this. This is a powerhouse in and of himself. This is what NVIDIA CEO says. He says, quote, building a massive factory, liquid-cooled, energized, permitted, in the short time that was done, that is superhuman. And as far as I know, there's only one person in the world who could do that. Elon is singular in this understanding of engineering and construction and large systems, marshaling resources. It's unbelievable. And then, of course, his engineering team is extraordinary. The software team is great. The networking team is great. The infrastructure team is great. Elon understands this deeply. And from the moment that we decided to go, this is because NVIDIA was involved because those 100,000 are NVIDIA chips, 100,000 NVIDIA chips. And from the moment we decided to go, the planning with our engineering team, then all of the infrastructure, all of the logistics, and the amount of technology and equipment that came in on that day to training, it took 19 days. That's incredible. So I think what Elon Musk and Next team did, and I'm really appreciative that he acknowledges the engineering work that we did at NVIDIA with him and the planning work and all that stuff. But what they achieved is singular. Never been done before. Just to put in perspective, 100,000 GPUs, that's easily the fastest supercomputer on the planet as one cluster. A supercomputer that you would build would take normally 3 years to plan. And then they deliver the equipment. And it takes 1 year to get all of the equipment working. We're talking about 19 days. Now that's Jensen Huang, the CEO, the brilliant, incredibly successful, amazing CEO of NVIDIA, talking about Elon Musk as singular, as superhuman, as his achievement is superhuman, as just this amazing, amazing guy. And I thought that was worth reading because, wow, that's high praise from somebody whose praise you should value, right? Because he himself is a massive achievement. This is not, Donald Trump giving you praise. This is not Kamala Harris giving you praise. This is an incredible entrepreneur of one of the most successful companies in the world right now, giving you this kind of praise. And I think it's true. I think Elon Musk is the greatest entrepreneur that we have alive today, one of the greats in all of human history. You saw that with SpaceX. He's got problems. I think he has problems. But when it comes to engineering, when it comes to big, audacious goals, when it comes to pulling off the unthinkable and making it happen, making it reality, going to Mars, there's nobody in the world like him. Nobody in the world like him. So truly amazing. I wish he was philosophically more sound, but you're not going to get all your wishes. It is, we all benefit from the fact that he is the genius that he is. The last thing in the world I want, another reason not to vote for Donald Trump, the last thing in the world I want is for Elon Musk to be distracted by becoming some kind of government efficiency guru in the government. That would be horrible. That would be horrible. Yes, and I know Elon Musk has problems with, that he doesn't embrace nuclear, and that he's an alternative energy guy, and he's a solar panel guy, and he says stupid things about solar energy. But you can criticize him, and we should criticize him, and we will criticize him appropriately. When it comes to this, when it comes to pulling off, building the biggest supercomputer, going to Mars, building amazing cars, in spite of everything, he's a pretty amazing human being. All right, let us jump into the super chat. I'd like us to, we'll see how long we go. We're going to do a solid 2 hours here, I think, given the super chats we have already. So please consider, supporting the show. If you enjoy the show, if you like the show, if you get value from the show, please consider supporting it. If you're live on YouTube right now, 170 people are. You can support it by using the sticker feature or the super chat feature and ask a question. Answer all my questions online. If you are listening and are not live, or listening live but not on YouTube, you can support the show on Patreon. Patreon's a great way to support the show. You can go to patreon.com. Do it right now. You can just do it right now. Open a window on your browser, on your phone, and just do it. Put in Yaron Brook Show and make a monthly contribution. It's pretty easy to do. If you'd rather use PayPal, it's easier because most of you maybe have PayPal accounts already. Just do the same thing, Yaron Brook Show on PayPal, or you can sign up through my website, yaronbrookshow.com/membership. All right, let's jump in with your questions, and then just a couple of things. One reminder: I'm doing an event in Denver on November 7th, 2 days after the election. The link to the event site is below in the description for today's talk. If you live in the Colorado area or Denver area, please come. I think you'll really enjoy it. We're talking about kind of a post-election analysis, but with a real eye to the future. with a real eye to where do we go from here? How do we resurrect freedom in America? It's part of the Defenders of Capitalism initiative, or the Radicals for Capitalism, or the Champions of Capitalism initiative of the leadership program of the Rockies. It's being put on by them. The website is also available down in the chat right now. Miroslav has just posted it. Please consider coming. There's only limited number of seats. We're almost run out. So sign up today. And there is a cost. I think it's $75. But there will be drinks and hors d'oeuvres and food, and you'll get entertained, and it'll be a whole evening, and it'll be fun. If you're in the Denver area, join us. I think you'll really enjoy this. So it's on Eventbrite, and you can find the link below in the description or in the chat, and go sign up now before we are sold out. It is also possible to sign up for those of you not in the Denver area for $15 for a live stream. So there will be a live stream of the event. I will put up the link to the live stream event as well down below here, where you can sign up for the live stream. So first, if you're in the Denver area, please sign up for the live event. It'll be more fun. But those of you not in the area who'd like to participate, please sign up for the live stream event. I will put the link for the live stream event as well. You can also search for Defenders of Capitalism live stream, November 7th, Yaron Brook. Google will bring it up for you pretty easily. All right, Evan, we often hear that cutting off the head will sprout a new one. That's just as bad. But maybe there's a global shortage of effective political leaders. Maybe doing this to the enemy leaders is totally crippling to them. I mean, there's a sense in which, Israel's done this for years. They've cut off the head and you had it sprouted up. I think the difference this time is they've cut off the head, and then they've cut off all the other heads just and a few levels underneath it. And then they've also killed thousands of people in between. And in the process, they've crippled the organizations militarily, and they've completely demoralized them. So if it was just cutting off the head, if that's all that happened, I would say, move on, nothing to see here. Keep on moving. It's not that interesting. But in the context of, probably killing north of 15,000 Hamas fighters and injuring, who knows, 30,000 or whatever. In the context of killing and decapitating Hezbollah, killing huge numbers of Hezbollah officers, but then and then both in Hamas and Hezbollah, killing off all the commanders in between. So there are like 2 senior people in Hezbollah that haven't been killed yet, and there's 3 in Hamas that haven't been killed yet. Of them on the military side, on the political side, there are many more. But everybody else has been killed. I mean, systematically. And the ones that are still alive are now huddled and hiding and afraid and so ineffective. And if you think about the Beeper attack, and you think about, and not only is that destructive to Hezbollah, but Hamas is looking at that and saying, whoa, these Israelis, they are powerful. So if you add it all up, I think what you're doing is you're basically demoralizing these organizations completely. You're demoralizing evil. You're basically daily showing evil how incompetent they really are. And that's why a final blow to the entire structure of this would be if the Israelis really destroyed Iran's military capabilities, really attacked them in a way that was unbelievably devastating. And then it would be like, okay, Israel can't be defeated. We can't handle them. We can't do it. We need to find a different way. And it just that shift in the minds is everything. And that's what Israel needs to go for. And that's what killing Sinwar helps do. So it's not a shortage of leadership. It's that they've killed so many and demoralized them in so many different ways that this is an addition to. Jennifer, is there really such a thing as double agents, or is that mostly movie stuff? I think there's double agents, and I think there have been historically. stories of double agents. So, while certainly it's a good story, but and sometimes you get triple agents. I think it does exist in reality as well. I think it does, and I think there are historical examples of it. Shali, per BBC, beloved Palestinian father of 9 slain by Israelis. Sarcasm. Yeah, I'm not sure that was actually the headline in the BBC. I think somebody posted it as if it was a BBC headline to give an example of how awful the BBC has been. And that anybody could even conceive of this as a BBC headline says a lot about the BBC. All right, we are basically $100 short of our goal for the second hour. So please consider using again the stickers or asking questions. But it would be great if we could get an extra $100 to get us to the $250 an hour, which in this case would be $500. And we've got about 20 minutes or so, 20 minutes or so, 24 minutes to get there. So plenty of time. But please consider $20, $5, $2, $50, $100 could make this go very quickly if we wanted to. But please consider supporting the show. David, Oslo Accord question. Why are you against the Oslo Accord? Many moderate Israelis and Palestinians see it as a road to peace. Yeah, and how's it done? It was a road to war, a road to bloodshed, a road to embedding Palestinian violence inside Israel. It was a disaster from day one. And look, I mean, I predicted it, right? I called my parents up the day after Oslo was signed, and I said, this will lead to nothing but violence. This is a disaster. Israel will regret this. This is horrific. And here's the principle, and it's a principle I stick by, and this is what objectivism teaches you. It teaches you to think in principle. You do not negotiate with evil. When the good compromises with evil, only evil wins. Chamberlain learned that in negotiating with Hitler. And you've got hundreds of examples throughout history. You negotiate with evil, the good suffers. And in this example, negotiating with Arafat should have been unthinkable. The only thing Israel should have done with Arafat is kill him as quickly as and effectively as possible. Arafat was a child killer. He was a murderer on scale. You don't negotiate with murderers. If there is a serial killer in your neighborhood, you don't negotiate with him and give him power and bringing in and say, oh, yeah, let's give you a bigger neighborhood in which to murder. You destroy him. And that was the only thing that could have been done legitimately to Yasser Arafat was destroy him. So Oslo had to lead to more violence because that is the nature of a compromise with somebody like Yasser Arafat. More violence. And it was imminent. As soon as he came back to the West Bank, he was exiled to Tunisia. As soon as he came back to the West Bank, he started fomenting violence against Israel. Terrorism started going up. And then every time Israel would compromise, he would do more violence. Every time Israel got tough, he would lay low for a little while. And then when he was offered 90+% of everything he claimed he wanted, he said no and launched the Second Intifada, which was a massive increase in violence. You see, you have to understand the nature of evil. Evil doesn't want peace. Yasser Arafat doesn't benefit from peace. He's not motivated by peace. Peace is just a pretense for more bloodshed. Because what motivates Arafat, what motivates Sinwar, what motivates these people is bloodshed, destruction, hatred. And it's not even that if they destroyed Israel, they would stop. Once they destroy Israel, they'll say, who's next? They'll turn to somebody else to destroy. Their whole essence is destruction. They are nihilists. They hate life. They want bloodshed. They want to destroy Israel. They don't want peace with Israel. And if they destroy Israel, then they'll look around and say, okay, who can we destroy next? Literally, we've got an Islamic empire to build. Let's go to Jordan. Let's go to Lebanon. Let's go to these other places, and let's start up there. Or they'll turn against each other and start slaughtering their own people, which they often do, right? So there is no possibility of peace with Hamas. There's no possibility of peace with Hezbollah. There's no possibility of peace with Yasser Arafat. They have to be destroyed. And only once they're destroyed can you negotiate peace, but only with those who are left who do not have blood on their hands, who expressed opposition to the murderous regimes under which they lived. And until the Palestinians develop a group of people who are willing to denounce their own regimes and are willing to negotiate real peace with Israel, there's no negotiating. Israel has to defeat them and crush them and do whatever's necessary to keep them pacified. And Oslo was an unmitigated disaster from beginning to end. And Israel's still paying the price because the most murderous Palestinians think, oh, we can negotiate ourselves out of this. And they'll keep murdering. The Godfather. Hi, Yaron. Washington Post has an op-ed indicating research fraud across multiple journals. Research fraud is defined as manipulating data, method, results to be published, which seems like an incentive problem. How would an objectivist solve this? So first, yeah, I mean, this is huge, huge, and it keeps getting bigger. And you know, Stanford's president a couple of years ago had to resign because it looked like his papers were doctored. Another very senior executive at the National Institute for Health has been demoted. This was the leading researcher into Alzheimer, has been demoted because it was discovered that images that he was using were doctored. This is a massive, massive, massive problem. And it's a problem that comes from, you know, the very basic nature of how research is done and how research is rewarded and how academia works and the tenure system and everything else. Look, you can't solve it without, in the culture in which we live. We live in a culture in which people are willing to do horrible things in order to appear smart to their counterparts. In a second-handed culture, fraud is rampant. The only way to get rid of fraud like this is in a first-handed culture, in a culture of people having self-esteem and self-respect and caring. I mean, peer review is essential for healthy science. I'm not against peer-reviewed journals. Peer review is essential. But, and indeed, if you go back to the Enlightenment, peer review was invented, if you will, or created by the Enlightenment. Because if I write something, I want my peers to give me feedback on it. I want to see maybe the errors in it. I want to see what's going on. But you see, in the Enlightenment, peer review was motivated by a search for truth. And the problem here is it's not motivated by search for truth. It's motivated by prestige. It's motivated by, second-handed motivations. And in a culture motivated by second-handed motivations, there is no solution. There is no solution. Now, one way to help reduce this is to penalize the people who are caught severely, fire them, publicize their names, shame them. And that seems to be happening. Second, with AI tools now, how are they discovering all this fraud? They're using a lot of AI tools. It's easy to find doctored images. Easier. It's just like, how are they finding all these people committing plagiarism? They run it through an AI. An AI can find that like that. So I think we now have technology that'll make it easier to detect fraud. Of course, researchers are not going to use AI in order to commit fraud. That might make it more difficult because they'll make it AI-proof. I mean, this is a constant battle that will have to continue as long as we live in a world in which people don't care about the truth. They care about their prestige. David says, it occurs to me that DEI initiatives are power grabs by university bureaucrats. Well, not just by bureaucrats. They're power grabs by particular faculty members because they get prestige by being the DEI people. But they're huge power grabs, huge power grabs. And so no question that is an aspect of it. But it's also ideological. That is, there's also philosophy here. Note that it's very easy to guilt administrators into buying into DEI. You don't want DEI? What are you, a racist? You don't want DEI? What are you, a selfish capitalist pig? So, yeah, I mean, the whole intellectual world in which we live is geared towards supporting DEI and undermining, undermining the those who would argue against it. All right, let me thank all the stickers because there've been a lot of them. I want to thank Ryan for starting us off with a bunch of $5 stickers. Thank you, Ryan. Silvanos, thank you. Really, really appreciate the sticker. Paul, Daniel, David, Mary Aline, friend Harper, all of you with your stickers. This doesn't stay there. And David again. Thank you, David. And Stephen and Mary and Jeremy and Althor and Gale and Thought Criminal. Lots of stickers today. I love this. And RDF. And then I saw a big one a few minutes ago. Let's see. I was scrolling down. Oops, I missed a few there. Nevfell, thank you. Coffee House Chronicles, thank you. Wes, thank you for the $50. Really, really appreciate that. Nathan Smith, thank you. Enric, thank you. Travis, thank you. And then David again, another David. HH, thank you. Adri, $50. Thank you, Adri. Really, really appreciate it. And yeah, and we're all good. And that brings us within $2 of our second hour goal. We've got 10 minutes still to go. Good. All right, Mary Eileen says, Sinwar is toast. Praise to Allah. Yes. Well, not to Allah. Praise to the tank. Praise to the gunner in the tank. And I can sympathize because I was a gunner. So Ryan Ward says, Sinwar dead. $5 sticker Thursday to celebrate. It's working, Ryan. Michael, could the Republican Party still get better even if Trump wins? I don't think so. Why? What would motivate it? I mean, if power is what motivates politicians, winning electoral votes motivates politicians, and if they win, then why would they change? Why wouldn't they double down? It's going to get a lot worse. Michael, in order to achieve a lasting peace, we may have to conquer the Middle East. Germany and Japan were conquered and re-educated for decades. No, it wasn't decades. It wasn't that long. And I don't think you needed to occupy them for that long. We stayed longer than we needed to. We poured too much money into it. What we really needed to is defeat them. What the Middle East really needs is defeat. If the Middle East is defeated, they will change. Peace can be achieved without occupation. It's already happening in small bits. What happens right now is regime change in Iran, and it really is over for the axis of evil. This particular axis of evil. Eutychus, it's pronounced Eutychus. Eutychus. Like you drink tea, cousin. Something like that. I don't know what that means. Like Eutychus. Kindly accept my token of appreciation. I'm but a poor Nigerian. I've always wanted to be a regular token contributor to YBS. No two down. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Eutychus. Yearly, $20. Thank you, Yearly. When people say the reason to vote for Trump is because the world was not on fire is something I have a hard time believing. It seems strange for things to go from peace to chaos in just 4 years. Your thoughts? I know, I mean, you're absolutely right. Look, Russia invaded Ukraine for the first time in 2014. And there was no peace between Israel and Hamas and Hezbollah. There were multiple altercations between Israel, Hamas, and Hezbollah during the Trump administration. And it was always a power keg ready to explode. So, no, I mean, it was all there during Trump. Trump didn't, cause it not to explode. It was just not the right time. It was just a question of time and when would it would actually explode. So the potential for chaos has always been there. China wants Taiwan. Now, it's true, the peace deal that Trump signed with the Taliban, and then the way it was executed by Biden projected massive weakness, which I think people look at and say, oh, we're going to take advantage of that, the bad guys of the world. But I don't think Hamas launched October 7th because of American weakness. I don't think they were looking at American. I don't think they cared whether Trump or Biden or anybody else was in the White House. I don't think Putin cared. Maybe under Trump, he would have gotten Trump to give him Ukraine rather than have to fight for it, right? He could have cut a deal where Putin would have come out the winner without ever going to war. It's hard to tell. But it was always there. The potential was always there. And it just happened that the 4 years that Trump was there, nothing happened. What did happen under Trump was COVID. And as commander-in-chief and as president of the United States, as our leader, it was an unmitigated, unbelievable disaster. 2020 was an awful, horrible, disgusting year. And that was Trump. So he showed no leadership ability, other than the development of vaccines, nothing. And then Floyd broke out, and you had riots all over America, and no leadership, no capacity to stop the rioting. It all happened under his watch. Why would we believe that it wouldn't happen a second time? Why would we believe anybody cares about Donald Trump when he was so weak and pathetic during COVID? And how weak and pathetic was it with North Korea, with the dictator of North Korea? So, no, I mean, it's just no there. Charles says, excited to see you speak in Denver following the election. Great. I'm glad you're coming, Charles. I'm excited too. And I hope more of you show up. It's going to be a fun event. Frank, should Israel target a mosque in its response to Iran? Also, do you think North Korea will go after families of the soldiers who deserted in Ukraine? I do think Israel should go after a mosque. I've said this for a couple of decades now. I think they should go after Homs. Homs is the spiritual capital of Shiite Islam. It's where all the big mullahs go to study. It's where Khomeini studied. It's where Khamenei was. It's where Sistani in Iraq studied. This is the center of Shiite. They should go after Homs. They should go after the mosques and the educational facilities in Homs. But they won't. It won't happen. Not Israel, not America. They won't do it. It will send a signal to, we don't accept this ideology, unacceptable. The stuff you learn in Homs leads to death and destruction, nothing more. Will North Korea go after families of the soldiers who deserted? Yeah. If the story's true, then yes, no question. They have a history of doing exactly that. Thomas, Yaron, can you update the November 6th evening event in Nashville on your website to include the RSVP link? I'm planning on attending, very excited. Yeah, I don't know why it's not updated. I will talk to my assistant. Check out my website. Oh, by the way, on my website, you should now have links to the national events on November 6th. Maybe not right now, but within a couple of days. And links to the November 7th event in Denver. So if you don't find events anywhere, YaronBrookShow.com. YaronBrookShow.com. And you can find links to all my events and more to come. Europe, if you're in Portugal right now, we're loading up event links for Portugal. If you're in Norway, we're going to load up event links to Norway. So soon, On my website, you will have all my events for this coming fall and winter. Jesper, what is the appropriate response when people argue that Israel is evil because they occupy Palestinian territory? They don't occupy Palestinian territory. They occupy territory that they gained during a war of self-defense. And Palestinians never had that territory. There was never a Palestinian state. They gained that territory from Egypt and from Jordan. Jordan has repudiated ownership over that land, or ownership or sovereignty over that land. So is Egypt. Egypt was offered the Gaza Strip. They don't want it. Now, the Palestinians claim that land, but the Palestinians have not shown their willingness to live peacefully side by side with Israel. So therefore, their claim to that land is illegitimate. If your claim to the land is because I want the land so I can attack you, that's not a legitimate claim. So Israel is occupying land that it occupies as an act of self-defense. It does not permit the Palestinians to have sovereignty over it, although they did in Gaza, because the Palestinians are committed to using that land to attack Israel. And Israel will, legitimately, rationally, from a self-defense perspective, does not allow that. Mike Milko, you, Ayn Rand, and the other colleagues at the ARI changed my life. Greetings from Modena, Italy. Come to visit me. I'd love to. I love Modena. Modena has one of my favorite restaurants in the world. And of course, it has the factory of Ferrari, which is always fun to visit. And it's not that far from one of my favorite places in the world, which is Florence. So yeah, I'd love to visit. Let's do an event in Modena. How about we put on a lecture in Modena, like organize a local community there, and I'll put on a talk, or maybe at the university, or maybe at the university in Bologna. That's maybe the oldest university in Europe, or one of the oldest universities in Europe. University in Bologna. Maybe we can put on an event in the University of Bologna. Invite me. Just send me an email, yaron@yaronbrookshow.com. Thank you, Mirko. Really, really appreciate it, and I'm glad I had a positive impact. Gobbled words. Can you distinguish objectivist concept of evil versus a more Judeo Christian version versus psychopathy? Yeah, I mean, Christianity is easy. I'm not a psychologist. I don't want to try that one. But the essence of evil, according to objectivism, is evasion. It's ignoring reality. The essence of evil, according to objectivism, is irrationality. Irrationality. So evasion means irrationality. Irrationality is the essence of evil. The evil is the irrational. Now, the more evil are, the more destructive your irrationality happens to be in the world. But the essential is the irrationality. That's what makes it evil. That's what makes it immoral. In Christianity, the essence of evil is, what do you call it? God, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not following orders. It's not doing what you're told. What's a good word for not doing what you're told? Disobedience. Yeah. The essence of evil in Judeo-Christian is disobedience. The essence of evil in objectivism is irrationality and evasion. And the essence of evil in psychology is, well, there is no essence, because evil in psychology is just a disease and there's nothing you can do about it, which is the exact opposite of objectivism. Right? Objectivism recognizes free will. It recognizes your ability to choose, to think or not to think, to engage with reality and not to engage with reality, to be rational or not to be rational. The choice not to be rational is a choice to embrace evil. Shazbat, do you get the sense that Musk wants to be more philosophically consistent, but just doesn't know how? I don't know. Musk is a mystery. I want to watch his interview with Tucker Carlson, which got philosophical and looks awful from the bits I've heard. But I just don't know. I mean, Musk is a enigma. To a large extent, an enigma. But I think he wants to be philosophical. but he dabbles in it, versus being consistent in his engineering. If he brought the same effort, same mind, the same focus on reality that he has doing engineering to doing philosophy, he would get it. But it's different. It's differently motivated. It's differently focused. Sadly, right? Ian says, is Elon Musk more Robert Stadler or Gale Wynand? I think he's more Gale Wynand. And the reason is, and I'm not even sure he's that bad. I don't know that he's that bad or that bad yet. But I think he's more Gale Wynand in the sense that, I think that he is, because he's a businessman, he has to deal with reality. And he is so non-evasive when it comes to reality qua business. In a way that, so he's more connected to reality than Robert Stadler is. Robert Stadler is connected to reality in a very, very, very narrow sphere. Elon in a pretty broad sphere. Business is a broad sphere. And in that sense, I think it's more similar to Gale. And of course, his business, though, is far more productive than Gale's. So I don't think it's a perfect analogy either way. Michael says, evil always dies. It has its 15 minutes, then gets crushed. Yes, but question is, how much damage does it do in the meantime? And how long does it take? Ian, just booked my tickets to Seoul. Your Netflix show recommendation got to my head, I suppose. Great show, thanks. Oh, cool. So Seoul, South Korea. Let me know how you like it and what you do there and what you discover. That's great. David, is emotionalism as bad epistemologically, or is it something else? Is emotionalism a bad epistemology, or is it something else? It's a bad epistemology in the sense that if you make decisions based on your emotions, that's epistemology. If you think that you're discovering truth based on how you feel, that's epistemology. If you just feel a lot, I don't consider that emotionalism. Emotionalism is actually using your emotions as tools of cognition. That makes it epistemology. And that's bad epistemology, but it's nobody thinks of it in those terms really, but that's what it is. By emotionalism, they don't think. So it's more, I think for most people it's a default. It's not a chosen thing. Andrew, each political side that is out of power touts the public opinion that the country is on the wrong track, but the public perpetually thinks the country's on the wrong track. How do you interpret that opinion? I mean, I don't know that the country perpetually thinks it's on the wrong track in the same numbers. It changes. People are more pessimistic now than they typically are. But yeah, people are focused on the negative, and political powers in opposition focus on that. Focus on people's view of the negative. I mean, one of the reasons Bill Clinton won in 2008 is because I think people then thought that in spite of all his flaws, in spite of his lack of character, the country was going in an okay direction. And therefore, they voted him back. So the Republicans were not good at portraying the bad track. And this is the problem. The fundamental problem is our political parties don't debate fundamental ideas. They don't debate their philosophical premise. They don't debate big issues. They're not debating, should we have more regulations, less regulations, more government intervention economy, less intervention economy? Should the government control more of your life or less of your life? All they debate is, I'm going to make your life better. I'm going to make your life better. How? I'm going to control those things that you think should be controlled, and I'm going to not control those things you think I shouldn't control, and that will change over time. There's no principle. There's no ideas. There's nothing. I mean, both parties are empty of any ideas, any principles. So they argue about minutia, about what kind of statist regulations we will impose, not on whether we should impose statist regulations. Do we want tariffs, or do we want taxes and unrealized gains? How about we want freedom? And so all they have is emotionalism. This goes to emotionalism. They manipulate people's emotions. That's all they have left. And use the different policy ideas as emotional, as ways to manipulate emotions. Shazbot, if capitalists are caricatured as pigs, what animal should represent socialists? I don't know. Parasites. You know, those worms that go inside your system and eat off of you. So any kind of parasite. They're also disgusting looking, so it's perfect. David, one of Green's laws of power is to be unpredictable. Wouldn't Trump get points for trait? Yeah, he definitely gets points for unpredictability, but I don't think unpredictability is a good thing. It's a bad thing. It's an evil thing. George Washington was not unpredictable. Thomas Jefferson was not unpredictable. All the great presidents were not unpredictable. So I think power in the negative sense, power, i.e. as control over others, but that's not what you want. It's not what you want. What you want is power as, I am going to stick to my principles, and here's what they are, and you can count on them, and you can adjust your behavior based on the idea that these are principles and they're going to be stuck to. Final question. I am still waiting for a response to Iran. Me too. Me too. I'm waiting. Maybe tonight. I thought it would be tonight. I have a feeling they're going to delay because of Sinwar, but I'm waiting. Waiting patiently, or not so patiently, actually. I'm not very patient about this. All right, everybody. Thank you. I didn't have time to pitch our sponsors today, so check their links down below. I will do that tomorrow. Thanks to all the super chatters. Went into our second hour goal. We made our second hour goal, went into our third hour goal. So I really appreciate that. I will see you all tomorrow around the same time. Have a great rest of your day. Bye, everybody.